This is Wascana Park, which is situated on Treaty 4 territory, the homeland of the Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, and the traditional territory of the Métis Nation. As we begin this treaty walk, I invite you to pause and reflect. What does it mean to be a treaty person, and how do we honor our responsibilities within this shared relationship? Let us move forward in a spirit of learning, listening, and respect. Wascana Park has a deep historical and cultural significance. The name Wascana comes from the Cree phrase Oscana Ka Asakateki, which means the place where the bones are piled. A long time ago, indigenous people stacked bison bones here to honor the animal spirit, which played a very important role in their way of life before colonial disruptions. Bison were central to indigenous food, culture, and spiritual practice. In the late 1800s, settlers gathered and sold bison bones to be used in industries, showing how significantly the bison population had decreased and how the economy was changing due to these actions. Today, Wascana Park symbolizes shifting relationships from indigenous stewardship to settler development. The land itself holds memories of tears, disposition, resilience, and renewal. This walk is an invitation to acknowledge these histories and engage in the treaty relationship. The legislative buildings observe the colonial architecture, reflect on how governance has changed the land and indigenous sov- sovereignty. How can institutions honor treaty commitments today? The Wascana Lake signifies how water is life. At first, the settlers in the Regina saw Wascana Creek as a water source. In 1883, they built a dam to create Wascana Lake, the area's main water source. The lake was used for drinking water, watering animals, and household needs. In the late 1890s, the Canadian Pacific Railway built one of the first pipelines from the lake to supply the water for its steam engines. By 1914, the lake had another purpose. The city built a power plant on its north shore to use the water for cooling turbines that generated electricity for the city of Regina. People soon realized that the lake could also create business opportunities. Water was hauled and sold in Regina for 50 cents a barrel. In 1906, James Grassick founded the Capital Ice Company, which cut and sold ice from the lake, producing around 10,000 tons per year until 1950. Think about the agreements that were made about land and water and what they symbolize for indigenous peoples. What responsibilities do we have to protect the natural resources of the land? The history of Wascana Park has stories that were often forgotten or ignored, but they are important to understand the effects of colonialism. The Northwest Territorial Jail, once standing near the park, was a place where indigenous peoples were frequently imprisoned, often for resisting unfair colonial laws. Some were jailed for leaving reserves without permission under the pass system, while others were arrested for practicing their own cultural traditions. Many prisoners did not survive their sentence, and those who passed away were buried in unmarked graves, forgotten by history. This hidden history is part of a larger pattern of indigenous criminalization, where policies such as residential school systems and laws restricted indigenous movements were used to control and assimilate indigenous peoples. The government's goal was not justice, but agreement, forcing indigenous communities to abandon their ways of life and accept colonial rule. The imprisonment of rubbing out these people remind us that fighting for justice is far from over. Recognizing these past injustices is the first step, but true reconciliation requires addressing the consequences of those actions. Acknowledging these histories challenges us to think about what justice truly means in a treaty-based society. How do we ensure Indigenous voices are centered in discussions about justice today? How can we acknowledge and honor those who suffered under these colonial systems? How can we ensure that past injustices recognized are recognized and addressed? In Treaty 4, we recognize that treaties are not just old documents, but ongoing relationships that need attention and respect. The Cree understanding of Wakotawin, or kinship, teaches that everything is connected: people, the land, and the spirit world. This belief reminds us that treaties are not just legal agreements, but are part of a larger relationship of mutual respect and responsibility. Honoring Wakotawin means recognizing that treaty commitments go beyond laws. Morals and spiritual duties also require permanent care and respect. We can think about that more while walking and enjoying the nature in the park. Treaty education is very important for creating a fair and more informed society. Schools must include treaty history in their curriculum, not as a distant past, but as a present relationship that requires active engagement. Saskatchewan's treaty education outcomes emphasize understanding Indigenous perspectives, learning about the impact of colonial policies, and recognizing the importance of treaty relationships in modern society. So many resources are available for teachers and Indigenous people who can be invited to schools and talk alive to students. Beyond the classroom, treaty education must extend into workplaces and walks where students and teachers can feel Indigenous cultures closer and with their souls. Public discussions, community events, and storytelling can help challenge stereotypes and create space for Indigenous perspectives. The history of Wascana Park provides an opportunity to discuss the consequences of colonial policies, from the loss of the bison to the unmarked graves of the Indigenous prisoners. Engaging with these stories helps to understand and encourages action towards reconciliation. Treaties are not just documents from the past, they are agreements shaping our present and future. They remind us that we all share responsibilities to each other, to the land, and the future generations. Walking through Wascana Park, we see layers of history: stories of resilience, displacement, and the ongoing struggle for justice. Recognizing the history of the treaties means understanding both the harm caused and the commitments that still need to be upheld today. This walk is just one step in a much larger journey. Reconciliation is not just a single action or acknowledgement, but a continuous process of learning, respecting, and making meaningful changes. It requires us to listen to Indigenous voices and advocate for justice in schools, workplaces, or everyday conversations. As we leave this place, let us remember that honoring treaties is not just about remembering history, but about shaping a better future. Each of us has a role in defending these agreements and building stronger, more respectful relationships. We are all treaty people, and it is our shared responsibility to live by the truth.